Well, hi, and welcome to another episode of the Social Strategy Mum podcast and live show. I am super excited to be able to introduce you to Sarah Sampana, who is a mindset and courage coach. And courage is kind of what we are going to be talking all about today. So, welcome, Sarah, and thank you for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited.
Yes, me too. Very excited. All right. So let's get into this. Sarah and I have just been having the most amazing chat, and I was just like, whoa, hold on, stop. We've got to get recording. Otherwise we're going to miss all of this gold. So I have some notes here that is going to make sure that we navigate our way back to that. But I guess what I would like to start with, Sarah, is if you can just let people know a little bit about what it is that you do and how you've ended up where you are.
Yep, thank you. So what do I do? Oh, I love this question. I think this one's always an interesting one when you are multi-passionate and kind of have lots of things that you love talking about and doing. But my main areas of expertise are working with women in business to up-level their mindset for success, looking at limiting beliefs and self-sabotage behaviours and how that's keeping them held back in their business. So that's the main thing that I love to talk to women about and can do that all day. But the other part of that is the courage. So I think, and you and I agree on this, that when it comes to doing anything in our business, before we have full confidence, we need to have that push of courage. So I always add on a little tap of courage to every bit of work that I do.
Awesome. And that is exactly how we connected to kind of do this episode, because I have been talking a lot about how waiting around for confidence to come is kind of like waiting for a train that's never coming, because you do really need courage to start with. Before you have the accomplishment, it really is the courage. And I call it like being pushed off a cliff. And recently I have been pushed off a couple of cliffs and the net has appeared and it's been amazing, but it's so difficult in that moment, and business requires us to do that on an almost daily basis in some little way to like just jump off that cliff. So I guess from you, I would love to know what really is courage and like where does it come from? Because I've had people who've said to me after I've spoken about courage and confidence, like, but where do I get that from? Like, where does the courage come from?
Oh, that's a good question. And I think for every one of us, it probably comes from somewhere a little bit different, given our obviously experiences and growing up and the things that we do and don't do. Um, for me, courage is having balls, for lack of better words, to really chase after and go for what you want. It's about taking the brave actions and just fully stepping into that with conviction and determination and resilience that that will get you where you want to be. So I think that where it comes from is somewhere deep inside you, somewhere deep inside your core, and I believe we all have it. I think sometimes we allow fear and we allow other things to silence the courage, to hold that courage underwater, for lack of better words, and we're going to put our fear at the top and allow that to do what we want it to, and that'll generally stop courage from coming through.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really true. So before we came on, we were talking a bit about how this can be very connected to why we do what we do, particularly in our business. So I'd love you to share why you do what you do.
Oh my goodness, I'm going to get started here. The main reason I started my business and went into coaching was two-pronged, really. The first part is that I have worked in community services for the last 10 years, helping vulnerable families make changes in their life to get where they want to go. So I really love that element of being able to help people. The second part for me was actually because I don't think there's a term for it, but a procrastinator person. Is that a thing? Let's make that a thing. So I literally would get to points in my life where I would be like, I feel so stuck. I feel so enclosed. I feel so boxed in. I'm also someone that really kind of doesn't like labels and really doesn't like the word should. You know, I think that they're really depowering words that we've got in our English language. So I would often get stuck, and then I would have like these massive bursts of courage and just be like, all right, I'm doing something different. And I would just make the decision and I'd go do it and see where it took me. And I think that when you kind of put that all together, I was like, well, how can I help other women who also have felt stuck? And one of the biggest things that I think that we find, especially when we're still fairly new in our business journeys, is that once we can actually open up to the possibilities of what our business can do and how we can grow it, and the things that we as amazing women get to do, it pushes me even further, and it helps other women push themselves even further. I feel like I've gone a little bit off track there.
That's okay. No, that's okay. So that gives me a pretty good, it pretty well uncovers your why. And so I'm guessing that why then gives you the courage to put yourself out there when it comes to business. Because this is a thing, like business asks us to put ourselves out there.
Oh God, yeah. And it's, and again, it comes back to that being a place of service. It's not about me. I'm always going to be uncomfortable with certain things. You know, one of the biggest things is having a microphone. And obviously, for those who weren't listening to us before you started recording, I was talking to Caroline about how I've just recently bought myself a new microphone because I would like to do podcasts and more videos at some point. But I have an absolute petrified fear of microphones from when I was a little girl on stage in singing contests. And it's taken me so long to be able to actually have a microphone in front of me without completely being an utter mess. I can manage to put sentences together, which is brilliant. But it's bringing me back to the reason I do this is for my clients, is for the women that need to hear the things that I have to say, and to help support them through that mindset wobble that is preventing them from being able to be the biggest success that they know they can be.
Yes. I love that. I love that. So really what you're saying is when you need a little bit of courage, you're focusing on what you're giving to other people. And the fact that you having that bit of courage then gives them the ability to have that bit of courage.
Yeah. Lead by example. Isn't that the way it goes?
I think that's the way it's meant to go, but we're making the rules here. So
yeah, that's it. Well, I'll choose that because that makes me feel more confident in what I'm doing as well, to be able to take those steps.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I love that you shared that story about the microphone, because it can be those little things. And that's a good segue to something else that you and I have spoken about previously. And that is, can we just talk a little bit about the role of fear and like what the point of it is according to our brain, basically?
Yeah. So I love fear. It's so great. In the sense of that, it really is there, designed by our ego to protect us, to save us from being harmed. And if, for those who haven't done a lot of studies into the brain and how it works and why it is designed the way it is, it's still designed for caveman days. So it was designed for caveman days to make sure that we were safe from the predators that were going to come attack us in the middle of our sleep. So our brain is literally spending the whole time looking for the threats, the things that could go wrong, the negativity, all of that kind of stuff. So that's why, we look at media and how things that are negative are bigger played out in the media, because that's what our brains want to see. That's what we are marketed to, because that's normal for our brains to be attracted to that. So when we look at what fear is meant to do, which is save us, I don't know how I could possibly get harmed by doing some of the things that my brain starts going red alarms and lots of things are going off and trying to save me from. But that's what my brain thinks, because I'm moving out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
So I'm scared to move out of my comfort zone, because in my comfort zone, I know how things are going to go. It's very predictable. My routine's going to be the same. Everything's going to be normal, for lack of better words. So when I want to step out of that and start doing something different, the brain literally goes into, oh my God, you need to stop and go back to where it's safe. So that's where we need to be able to do some work for ourselves around not allowing that fear to stop us from that.
Yeah, absolutely. So true. It reminds me of the book Big Magic and the analogy that Elizabeth Gilbert gives about fear not driving. Like, it's okay, like, you're here, you're in the back seat, it's sweet, but I've got this. Like, I've got it covered. We're good. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's that same kind of thing. And it actually has a function, fear, of
Mm-hmm.
keeping us safe. But in business, we kind of have to push ourselves to unsafe places in order to, get out there and do our thing. So I think
Yes.
that's where the fear comes up, and then we need the courage to be able to kind of push through that.
Yeah, definitely. And just reminding yourself that the fear is fake. So, it's not, the realness of the fear is not going to do you any harm. And I think that we spend a lot of time trying to hide from the emotions or the unpleasant emotions. So, things like embarrassment, like, what happens if I get on this podcast and I fall flat on my face? Like, I could have allowed myself to continue to think that and, message you and being like, hey, I'm sick and dying and can't make it. Or I can just step into this fully and go, this is me. This is what I've got to say. This is how I show up in the world. And I'm going to do this. But I think that, and I've got to say, that there's been times where clearly I have stayed in that fear and I've been like, no, I'm not going to do this scary thing, or I'm not going to, it took me, it's taken me nearly 12 months to write a blog post and get that up on my website. Like, again, it's that fear that I allowed to stop me. So it's completely normal. But at what point do we say enough's enough?
Yes, that's so true.
How much sorry, I was just going to say how, at what point do we say I'm going to go after my vision of what my business can be, as opposed to sit in my little comfort zone of don't put too much out there and don't say too much.
So I think the two takeaways for this are going to be that fear is fake. And then it kind of leads to this idea of, why would you then let a fake fear stop you from achieving the vision that you've got?
Mm-hmm.
If you're that connected to why you're doing this, that's where the power is, to go, I'm over and above that fear. So there's kind of two places that I want to go here, and I'm like, which way do I go? Which way do I go? So I want to just talk a little bit about self-belief, because I know that this is a big area that you focus on.
Yeah.
And we spoke before we came on a little bit about just some of the really crazy ways that we construct our self-belief during childhood, and the stories that we create around self-belief from, we were talking about just the most minute little episodes of things that happen when we're young and the way that they kind of feed into that. So I'd love if you could just talk a little bit about that and where that self-belief comes from.
Yeah, beautiful. So as you and I were talking about before, when we're children, we do make up stories and try to make logic of the things that happen to us. And I'm not talking in trauma ways, I'm talking about everyday ways. So mum comes home from work, she tells us to clean our room, we don't, she yells. As a little person, our brains are wired to make a story from that. And again, as we were talking about just before, we automatically go for kind of negative things. That's what our brain does. That's the way we're programmed to work. So we'll turn that into a story, generally along the lines of something like, I'm not worthy, or I'm not lovable, or I'm not enough, which is one that, a lot of people, especially women, carry, is that I'm not enough. And that'll come from little episodes in our lives like this. Now, as adults, when we start looking into those stories and start really delving under the beliefs that we have around it, and we get to these stories of childhood, as logical adults, we can see that that's actually utter crap, and that story isn't true, and that thing that we've been holding on to actually starts to lose power and starts to stop having so much emotional hook in us. That's what I call it. It's an emotional hook. Because then when we look at that story now as an adult, I can look at that, and go, well, mum was probably stressed because she'd just come home from work, and I was probably being a little bit of a shit because I'm a kid, and that's what we do as kids. We're a little bit of shit. That's fine. And So that story probably had nothing whatsoever, or that situation had nothing whatsoever to do with me, other than I didn't clean my room and it made mum angry. But there's all this other stuff as adults that we can make logical sense of to why it happened and the way it happened. So when we start looking at that and we can start unhooking those emotions to the stories and beliefs that we have, that's where we start getting the power to really step into our self-belief fully. So as you mentioned before, self-belief, I love talking about it because I think it is sometimes the most crucial piece to not just business, but life. Because when we've got that belief, we can literally do anything. Well, maybe not anything. I'm not going to try to become president with my self-belief, but like literally you can do so much by believing that you have the possibilities available to you. And one of the things that I think in business that we struggle with is that belief, because there's always someone doing it better, in our opinion. There's always someone doing it better. There's always someone that makes it look prettier. There's always someone making more money. There's always someone, comparison artists is massive because we get on social media and everyone's got everything right there in front of us to show us why we aren't A, B, and C. So it's really taking that step back and looking at your belief around what is possible for you. What can you create? How can you step fully into your business and bring courage to make that impact? Like, you've got it in you. We know you've got it in you. So let's tap into that, because sitting back and playing small does no one anything, and especially not the people that you're here to help. So as women, we are here to help in some way, shape or form from our products and services. And if you're wanting to get there and help as many people as possible, you need to believe that you can do that. And it's funny because as coaches, we can see that in our clients, otherwise we wouldn't be working with them. But giving that to them and giving it to ourselves at the same time is such a powerful move to playing bigger and making the impact we really want.
Yes. Oh, so anyway, so much. There's so much good stuff in there. So I guess to loop us around and kind of wrap things up, I'm wondering if you'd be willing to share about the leap that you've just taken, the courageous thing that you've just done, but also just to illustrate, like, just because we know these things doesn't mean that we are immune to the way that our brain works.
Oh God, no. Yeah. And like, as a mindset coach, and I was saying this to you before, like sometimes I feel a bit fraudulent because I'm like, I help people with their mindset, but like mine is shit right now in a moment. But I have some really good tools for myself to not stay in that. So one of the tools that I use is I fully allow myself to feel my emotions. I fully allow myself to feel my imposter syndrome when it comes up, and the embarrassment of, oh my God, did I just say that on a live? Or holy crap, did I really just do that? Or put that mistake in an email? Or all of the things that we all know very well, because we all have done them. And if you haven't done them, it means you need to get ready to do them, because you're gonna, and it's okay. Yes. And feel that stuff. So my thing is, feel your feelings, but don't unpack and live there. So it's kind of like going to visit Aunt Sally, who's got all the feelings. We're going to go visit Aunt Sally. We're going to feel them feelings, but don't unpack your shit and don't stay there, because it's not going to help you. And sitting in that space will just keep bringing you down. And that's 100% not where you want to be. So that's one of the tools that I remind myself that I'm human and I can sit in that space and it's fine. Another one of those tools is journaling. So journaling for me is the most amazing way to get out the millions of thoughts in my brain and make sense of it. Because when it goes around and around in my head, whether I'm talking about in my head about an offer or feeling crap about something I've just done or whatever, being able to journal about it and put it out on paper really makes me look at it logically. Yeah. So when it's in my head, it's not very logical, because it's emotion based, and it's fueled by generally some type of negativity, which is why it's going around in circles. But when I put it on paper and I look at it and I go, oh, is that it? All right, I can deal with that then, because it's now a reality out there to deal with. So So that's another one that I find is super helpful in regards to being able to do that. The other one I really love doing as well is reminding myself to literally deal with my reality. So instead of sitting here and going, all of these things could happen when I get on this podcast, for an example, sit back and go, you know what, Sarah, you know that no matter what happens, you can handle it. So deal with it when it comes up instead of trying to preempt all the things that could go wrong. So I think that we often sit in that space of what if, like, what if I do this and it doesn't work? Or what if I do this and, you know, something grows out of the ground and swallows me whole? Like, I don't know, like we just, the what ifs. And I think that when we can remind ourselves to trust that we can handle no matter what comes our way, then we can deal with the current reality and deal with that as it comes up.
Yeah.
So they're the few things that have really helped me to work through my own mindset wobbles as a mindset coach, helping others do the same thing and reminding myself that I'm completely human, as we all are, which is amazing. So the courageous step that you're talking about is the fact that I just resigned from my 9 to 5. And this one is massive for me. So I have been working in the community service sector for over 10 years, and it's a very structured way of doing things, and it's a very secure employment considering, especially given the current circumstances.
Yep.
And my husband is also a business owner. So I think that one of the things that have probably made it that little bit harder for me is that as two business owners, the inconsistency of income that could possibly come is hella scary. Like,
Yeah.
but I got to that point where I was like, you know what is the worst that's going to happen? The worst that's going to happen is not me dying. So that's okay. So I can live with that. What happens if I get bankrupt? Well, I've got a plan B. Like it's that, again, that self-belief, that knowing that time and time again throughout my life that I know I can handle whatever comes my way. And I've always said, you know, I am a bit of a risk taker. It's my nature. And I will always jump in the deep end.
Yeah.
Because I know that even if I can't swim, I'll damn well float and I'll never drown. And I think when you start to really get that sense in yourself that no matter what happens, I got this, then you can start taking a little bit more actions that are even more scary than you can imagine. So I've got, and I was saying before, yesterday I had this moment where I was like, maybe I can just take my resignation back. Maybe they'll just let me come back. Like, maybe it's fine. But then, you know, I jumped on a call with someone this morning and I was like, no, this is what I'm doing. This is my why. Having these calls, speaking to these women about being able to move forward and build their success mindset reminds me of what I'm doing and why I'm doing it and why the hell I don't want to do a 9 to 5 anymore.
Yes. Oh, I love it. I'm so excited for you. The energy is palpable, and I love that you are willing to be honest that it is not easy, but that doesn't mean that you should go and run and hide. There's this idea that if something's hard, we shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah.
That's not the case. Like, things are hard, but I love that you have that underlying self-belief that you're going to make it work.
And I'll just jump in there. Don't forget it's perspective too. Like, hard is only as hard as you make it. So two different people, exact same situation, someone's going to cope with it better than someone else. And 95% of that time is going to come down to your perspective on it and your perception of it. So you can tell yourself it's hard, and guess what? It's going to be. Or you can tell yourself that you have the ability to do it and it's not that hard. Like, side note, it really is. But if we at least frame it and make it not feel so hard, then it 100% becomes easier and easier, like every step. So I just want to add that side note in there because I think that one's a massive thing, is that perception on how we want it to be. And I've decided that my business will be easy. And that doesn't mean that everything I do is an easy step or that it's not difficult to do. But for me, it's going to be easy. I allow it to be easy, and I'm going to make sure that I'm doing it the easiest way possible.
And that is very clearly a conscious choice. And I think that is sometimes people don't realize that they literally get to choose the way they do business.
Yeah. Hell yes. I think it's And again, I think that comes when we first start in business because, you know, we're sold all the different things. And honestly, there's all, like, even now, sometimes I just really don't love getting on Facebook because every second one's an ad about something that's going to help me get $1 million in 5 minutes, because, you know, that's possible for most people. So I think because we're sold that time and time again and sold all these, you know, things, that we forget that we actually get to decide. Like, if I don't want to do this particular strategy, or I don't want to work a particular way, I don't have to. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to be less successful unless I choose not to be.
Yeah.
So much is choice. So much of it is choice, that we get to choose whether or not we step into our business fully. We get to choose how we show up in our business. We get to choose whether or not we allow fear to stop us or not. We get to choose the courageous actions over and over again until we've got the confidence to just keep running with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So good. So good. All right. Well, I think I'm just going to wrap it up because I feel like we've covered so much. It's been amazing. So good takeaways in there, and definitely the piece that we all needed to put in to really lock onto what that courage is and where it comes from and what it looks like and the work we can be doing in order to bring ourselves closer to that.
Yeah.
Which is all that underlying, you know, self-belief. I love finishing on the note that you can literally run your business however you like. It is entirely your choice how hard it is or how easy it is. It is totally our choice. It is the same for your social media, and I tell clients this all the time, like, you do you make your choices.
Yeah, and I'm so glad I learned that with you, because beforehand I was like, but I just don't have the right strategy, and I don't have the right this, and I don't have the right that. And then I was like, you know what, actually, I'm going to say what I want, how I want, when I want it. And I'm going to do it with consistency, because I still believe in that. But my consistency doesn't mean that I have to post at the same time every day, or, you know, or even every day. Sometimes I don't post every day. Sometimes it's every second or third day, because that's what feels best to me. But when you actually step into that, you see so much growth. Like, I've seen so much growth out of literally just doing it my own way instead of worrying about what everyone thinks that I should do. And it's good to have tips and tricks and to learn bits and pieces about social media that I was like, I didn't know it did that. But because I have, and every time I see something new again, I'm like, oh, it's another new fancy thing that I can play with and get to know and learn and love about social media. But you couldn't have said it any better than that. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like, to be honest, in the last few weeks, I have seen you doing you so much more than ever before, and it's showing because the business is growing, and it's so key. All right, Sarah, thank you so very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's been great fun.
Totally welcome. Guys, if you want to connect with the amazing Sarah Sampana, links will be somewhere near this video or audio, so you can head on over and check her out. I would really encourage you, like her on Facebook, follow her on Instagram, help her boost up those socials, have a great conversation with her, because she is a top chick. And I will talk to you guys again next week. See ya.